put up there for you all is the short tracker, is what we call it. And these are bills that you have identified as top tier, and that we, as your lobby team, will be actively tracking, if not engaging in, defensively or proactively on your behalf. I just want to point out, though, that your staff, along with all of us, is looking at all the bills to make sure that we're not missing anything, and that there may be some things that they can manage and assist, but they don't need to rise up to the level of council engagement. So you have an amazing team that's looking at all these bills as they're introduced, and making sure they're viewing them with your lens. So with that said, Danae, did we want to maybe just walk through the major topic areas with then the bills? And so maybe we can do that without screen sharing, but unless you want to keep this up there, either way, it's fine with us. We can't see you all when we screen share.
Yeah, you can go ahead and take it down if that's helpful for you. Yeah, whatever's best.
Great. Okay, thank you. And I hope you all have that and can click on it as we're talking. But and Julia can also maybe elevate some things into the chat. And I should point out, Julia Scanlon, my colleague here, is on and assists me with all things Broomfield. So so first of all, I think we wanted to, again, in the major areas that you all have identified based on your policy rubric, wanted to talk about some local control issues. There has been a bill introduced, House Bill 1026, which basically is a taxpayer bill of rights for the local level. It requires a vote prior to any tax increases. It is coming from a conservative member of the House, Representative Bockenfeld. It's been assigned to State Affairs, which is traditionally the, quote, kill committee. We actually have this on the list, but do not believe it's going to survive even its first committee. And so we know you tagged it, but just wanted to tell you we're not overly worried about it. So, and we know CML opposes. I believe that CCI and CCAD have had it under consideration, but haven't taken positions yet. So that's 1026. We also are expecting in this space some a bill regarding open meetings and accessibility. And I know Danae and some of your team have been involved in these discussions. We have not yet seen a hard draft, but obviously we'll be looking to balance very important needs of accessibility, access to everything that you all do, along with what's reasonable and what is doable. So we're expecting that bill to come and again have it under review. That so far is like I should say there's other issues that impact local control, but they fall more in the housing and transportation realm. But these are ones that we put in the strictly local control bucket. Danae or Julia, was there any others that you wanted to add to that category? Okay, I'm seeing heads shake no. All right, well then let's move on to housing and land use. And this is remains again a big area of expected involvement this session. Your staff and the council individually, many of them have been involved in meetings on a variety of different bills, all of which have not yet been introduced. One that we do know has been introduced is House Bill 10007. And this prohibits residential occupancy limits. And again, Julie, maybe you can plunk that link in the chat as we're talking about it. And then I can also let you speak to it. I know you've been closer. But the goal here is really to ensure that local governments are not putting restrictions on how many people can be in a residential setting, across the board, apartment, single family home, etc. With the idea here of, again, giving access to homes, providing more density of the number of peoples that are living in units, etc., to address the housing crisis and to ensure that there's not discrimination going on based on family structures, etc. So a really interesting bill, because obviously there's federal law around this as well. But Julia, why don't I turn over to you to let you talk about where 1007 is and what the status?
Yeah, I think just to kind of highlight, there's been a lot of support the general idea, which has sort of come out of non-traditional families and living situations and how many unrelated people can be in a residence together. So that's sort of the onus behind where sponsors were coming from, at least with their rationale, again, based on what Ruth already said about increased density in general and access to housing. What is kind of important to know in the local government space is a lot of folks are currently in amend on the bill, with understanding, what the heart of the bill is trying to do, but how does this actually shake out in practice? I will say, kind of important to note, it's a lot of folks in the higher education space looking at, well, what do you do with how many kiddos can live in a house near, CU Boulder? And do we really want 15 people living in one home? And where does the language in the bill fit in terms of there is some allowance for, health and safety, but kind of fine tuning the details, I would say, is what higher education and some local governments are looking at. So the big thing here is it is set to be up in committee tomorrow. So at least as far as I know, I think CCI might be in an amend position. CCAT is waiting to see how it shakes out after this first hearing to see what new language gets added, and we're discussing on Friday. I think what's going to happen is they'll probably have to add in some more stipulations for when local government and places like higher education are allowed to have limits. So trying to keep the heart of the bill so that non-traditional folks can live together, but without unintended consequences. So far, sponsors have been, open to conversations, and as far as I know, that's been going well.
And let me just add a quick Broomfield context to that. So we do already have occupancy limits in Broomfield. Anna has looked at this bill. This would extend beyond what our currency occupancy limits are. And again, we're looking at it through a local control. CML is looking at oppose unless amended because of that. And Councilmember Hinkle also, there's impacts on infrastructure and that piece. So we are monitoring this, but I do want to recognize Anna is looking through that through Broomfield does have occupancy limits right now. And the other piece I want to mention, and I think Anna said this at the council meeting on Tuesday, is the challenge is enforcement, right? So having these and then the practicality of actually enforcing them in the areas is the challenge that we've even seen with our occupancy limits. So that's a piece that will need to be explored through the bill as well.
So again, we will report back to your team after it should emerge from committee tomorrow, and know that your membership associations are working pretty hard to amend that one so that it's more palatable. Then also in this area, there's three major bills that have yet to be introduced. One is the Transit-Oriented Community Bill, or TOC, which has been, it's essentially the part of that bill that was in Senate Bill 213, but revised. And the governor's office, along with Representatives Judah and Woodward, Senator Winter and Hansen, are sponsoring those bills. They have been holding weekly stakeholder meetings since probably November to go through the bill in detail and to set, essentially what the bill does is to say, we're setting a housing goal each year, and here's the goal in statute. Each jurisdiction has to meet that goal, and they need to do so by a date certain. If they, and it's restricted to transit-oriented communities that are defined also in the bill. And that shakes out to just pretty much the Metro Denver area. It includes all of the municipalities in that area, the city and county Broomfield, city and county of Denver, Arapahoe County, Jeffco, Douglas, and Adams. So whereas last year it encompassed the entire state, this is really transit in the sense of urban transit. The bill further then says if a jurisdiction does not meet these, provides them with some revenue. So you get a bit of money to help you meet your standards, to help you plan, to help you purchase infrastructure if that's needed. And then if the goal is not met, it would take away your highway transportation user tax. So essentially it still has some sticks in there, which is what has been described by the sponsors as is needed to make sure that jurisdictions are complying with this housing goal. Um, lots of conversations still. Local governments have expressed strong concern about the use of HUTF. I think Mayor Castriota just asked if it's even legal. I think that's a good question. Clearly, these dollars are formulaic in how they're dispersed, and they're intended to prevent or support safety and infrastructure needs in our communities. So in response to the, we don't want HUTF, the sponsors and the administration have said, well, then what do you want? We feel that there needs to be some kind of stick in addition to incentives. And if HUTF is not acceptable, then what else? So far, the local government community has said, we really don't feel sticks are appropriate, and we don't want to provide you with that kind of a thought because we just don't think it's even appropriate. Let me maybe stop here and see if there's any other context. We don't have a bill. Again, we have a draft bill, but we don't have a final bill. And we anticipate, good 2-3 more stakeholder meetings on this. So we're in a bit of a, I don't want to say limbo phase, but this negotiation phase still before final introduction.
I think, Ruth, the only thing I would add just for council's reference is from a staff's perspective and reviewing it and looking, they're calling it a floor now. So if you were at the legislative breakfast, you heard Senator Winter speak about the floor that you meet to be able to have access to these grant funds, which, as Ruth mentioned, is essentially repurposing people's HUTF funds into a grant fund program if you don't meet the floor. So I think from a staff perspective, the two things we want to highlight is obviously there's still preemption in here. So that's one piece. And then the second piece is just, around the HUTF funding and that model and how that money works. So we want to let you know that staff is having follow-up conversations with Nancy's team, as well as the bill sponsor, to figure out what that actually looks like in practice and how that would impact. So for quick background, we receive about $2.2 million per year as Broomfield through our HUTF fund. And we get that money monthly. The monthly payment varies, right? Because it depends on how many people pay that tax for that month. But it's around about $190,000. So we're trying to understand from the sponsors as well, what does that mean if you take it? Is it just that month, or is it until you hit the floor? What does that look like? So we are working on clarifying that with the sponsors as well. Mayor Castriota.
Yeah, no, thanks. The other part too is the unfunded mandate part, because rezoning a parcel requires staff resources, money, that this bill doesn't supply. We would have to hire another full-time equivalent to enact this whole rezoning in the TOC they've designated. So it is an unfunded mandate in addition to preempting our home rule authority. Those are two of our legislative policy principles that we oppose. So I think it's pretty cut and dry that this is punitive. There's no carrot for us. Instead, why don't they exempt communities like Broomfield who are meeting these density goals? What are we not doing? Because I can point to a lot of things that we're doing that fit into this guideline. And I don't know what more they want, but to force us to rezone comes with a price tag. It's not just snap your fingers and rezone. It's notifying property owners. It's so much more. And the people that are behind this legislation clearly have no concern over what it's going to cost us. Thank you.
I see Austin has, Council Member Ward has his hand up.
Oh, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. I just have a question about the HUTF funds. What roads in Broomfield go to or use that funding for maintenance and et cetera? Because I don't think it's all roads in Broomfield.
Councilmember Ward, can I repeat that back just to make sure I understood the question? So the ask is with HUTF funds, where those are allocated within Broomfield?
Yeah, that's a better way of saying it.
Okay. Manager, I think I know the answer, but Jennifer, did you want to add something first? It's so, and I don't know if finance is on, but I also see Sarah. So if this isn't consistent, let me know. But I did do research on that. And my understanding is it actually goes into the general fund to just maintain the infrastructure in our roads, and it's allocated based off of priorities and needs. And it is not enough right now. So that 2.2 million that we get in a year already is not enough for us to maintain our current road infrastructures in the city and county of Broomfield. But Sarah, is there anything else you would add to that?
No, you got it, Danae. Thanks.
Okay. Does that help, Councilmember Ward?
Yeah, it does. And I just had a question on that, just for my own knowledge. I agree with Mayor Castriota that I don't think it's entirely legal for them to do that, particularly for this use of punishing for lack of housing. I think the only thing I have to say on this is that's the only part of the bill that I actually oppose, is the use of the highway trust fund.
Right.
Thank you
Let's
for
hope.
that. And let me just add one thing. When the bill is introduced, this is obviously one that we will bring back to council for the dais conversation and you all to take a vote of what that position looks like, because we recognize that there are different perspectives and this is a big bill. So this is one that we will bring back for a formal position on with the entire body.
All right, I'll go on just because we have so many bills here. The next one in this area.
Jen has her hand up, Ruth.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought Jen, that was from before. My apologies.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead, Ruth.
Well, I was just, so just for Ruth, so the Mayor Pro Tem and I had a conversation last week on this bill. And so Broomfield is doing the analysis so that we can have a comprehensive snapshot for that carve out. And it wouldn't be just for Broomfield. So any community that is doing the checklist of the 5 things that we're doing, all of which will have examples of how well we've been doing it and how long it takes, which is really key of how long we've been working on this, because that switch to think that you're going to turn on any faucet, whether it's land use, whether it's PO, any one of those pieces is going to take, in our estimation, 24 to 36 months on the outside in order to make these transitions. So again, rather than, kind of pitting ourselves against the bill sponsors, we want to stay on the high road, which is we're doing it well. Here's the outcome. Here's how much it costs. And so again, it would really be a template for other communities to follow. So it wouldn't be a carve out for specifically Broomfield. It would be for communities that are doing it well. And we'll have that by end of day. Danae, yes?
Yeah, Anna and I have it pretty good, well put together on Friday. I just want to run it through Jen first to make sure there isn't blaring anything we missed, and then we'll get that shared out with everybody. Mayor Castriota, the goal is to have it before our conversation tomorrow as well. So
Just so those on the call that don't know, I am meeting with Senator Winter at 7 a.m. tomorrow, which is something I never agreed to. So taking one for the team with Ruth and Danae.
That's going to be very helpful, I think, on many levels. So thank you to the team for putting that together. And I saw Councilmember Ward had his hand up again, but then I lost you on this. So is there another question? Sorry.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button.
Oh, okay, no worries. Okay, well, obviously a lot happening behind the scenes and directly with our own legislator, who is of course carrying the bill. So to be continued, we'll keep you posted. And that one is clearly, one of the biggest issues that we're going to be tackling down at the Capitol this year. In this same area, then another chunk of 213 that is coming as a separate bill is the strategic growth and planning bill. And this one really looks to require jurisdictions, local governments to think about their housing and plan for it, which of course Broomfield has done exceptionally well over the past many years. But it does that with an eye again towards affordable housing, density, and some people are saying, does it do enough for affordable housing? So I sort of say that a bit in air quotes, but that is the articulated goal. There's also several pieces of this that deal with, our climate change goals. This bill is coming, it's an interesting dynamic. It has been initiated by Senators Kirkmeyer and Zenzinger and Representative Byrd with the support and engagement of CML, really to get at the heart of, okay, we agree that we need to do some planning. Let's take the lead on that. And they started with what they had compromised in Senate Bill 213 last year and are now working from that place. What we have heard is that also Senator Roberts, Dylan Roberts from the Mountain Communities, has a bill in the same area, and that the two parties are trying to work together to have it be one bill. And it's sounding like there's pretty much agreement, except for the climate change considerations. That Senator Kirkmeyer in particular is raising some concerns around those. And so I was just in and Julia was too, in the president's office, President Fenberg, the other day. We know they're trying very hard to come to some consensus around those. So we're unclear if they do that, it will be one bill. If they don't, it will be Kirkmeyer and Zenzinger running a bill that does not include climate objectives, and Senator Roberts running another bill that does. Eventually, of course, they'll have to dovetail and reconcile with one another.
Ruth, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Because it occurred to me that, we have a very strong inclusionary housing ordinance in place, and we have had that for 3 years. And this has given us the ability to negotiate for truly affordable units in the 60% AMI category. How do these forced zoning and forced, letting developers do whatever they want bills, does it take away our ability to negotiate for the truly affordable units that we're not going to get from our benevolent developers on their own? You really have to, require it. And that's what we've been able to do. So does that take us backwards and take away our ability to negotiate for that 20% affordable for rent or 10% for sale?
I think that's a relevant question to the TOC bill that we can point out also tomorrow with Senator Winter. This bill, I think, is really around insisting that jurisdictions plan and that they, are doing that in a way that meets these goals, but it doesn't have the sticks and carrots in it. It is more of a planning bill, if that makes sense.
No, yeah. Senator Zenzinger and Rep. Byrd came to the Metro Mayor's Caucus retreat and said,
good. Okay.
Their bill has mandates, but it's not preemptive. It doesn't have sticks. It's mandates.
Yeah, and
it's really goals as opposed to forced goals.
Yeah, and I believe that, again, Broomfield is, from what you've told me, and I know staff is doing analysis, but in this space, we're already way far ahead of the game in terms of, like you said, we have inclusionary zoning. We've, done this kind of difficult conversations with communities already and have a plan, whereas some cities and counties do not. So I think that's the goal of this bill. Julia, would you add anything on this one?
No, I mean, I think I don't want to take up more time because I know we only have another 30 minutes and there's a whole bunch of other things. It's, very much the big thing in the building right now. I'd say, expected to be one of the more interesting, contentious things. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, well, I mean, this one, I think we need to look at it through the Broomfield lens. I'm not sure this is our hill to die on relative to the other hills that are on the table. But So,
Ruth, let me just add, just for council's reference. So I have the draft bill and I've reviewed it, but I met with CML on Friday and they're anticipating some big amendments. So again, it hasn't been introduced, but it's drastically going to change between what it is now. So it's a good reminder for us to be patient and continue to review before we take those positions, because it looks very different than what I saw last week. So we'll do a more thorough analysis. Robert at CML has been very helpful once we get those updates, and then we'll see what that bill looks like with those it was a major strike through when I saw it Friday afternoon. So more to come on that one for sure.
so then the third bill that we expect to come from the quote 213, I wanted to say ashes, but that's not very polite, maybe, is accessory dwelling units. And that one is, again, in draft, and it will be sponsored by Representative Judy Amabile from Boulder and Senator Kyle Mullica from the Thornton, Adams County area. Again, Broomfield allows ADUs. I think you've shared with us that we have maybe 3 or 4 that have decided to take up ADUs in the city and county. But this would ensure that every jurisdiction across the state allows them. And also some of your membership associations are working to put some parameters in there, such as if a local jurisdiction has requirements around deed restrictions, that those be honored so that these units are actually affordable, which is the goal. We understand, not, you put it up and have it be a rental for weekend skiers, that kind of thing. And that, of course, the infrastructure demands that the local government be able to meet the infrastructure demands of any ADU. So this, I think, again, won't be necessarily a big one for Broomfield, but we do need your eyes on it to just make sure, and that there's not any red flags with what we currently do relative to what it's proposing.
And let me add just Broomfield context really quickly on that. So just for a reminder, our ordinance that we have right now in Broomfield does not specifically override the ability of HOAs to restrict ADUs. So that we ask that they contact their HOAs before they submit a request for a permit through us. But there's not but there isn't a requirement that the HOA sign off. And we did reach out to planning to see if we knew how many HOAs did not allow them, and we don't have a list of that. But I do want to just share with the group that is very much on our radar, and we are having those conversations with the bill sponsors as well.
Yeah, and again, this bill would override HOAs, so it would be a matter of state law that you can that.
Does anyone else think that's a mistake to pick that fight? Half of Broomfield lives in an HOA, and they're not going to take too kindly for people moving the goalposts. So good luck with that.
Yeah.
We'll get blamed.
So one more than under the housing land use, and this is not an equally easy topic, and that is construction defects. So again, we haven't seen specific bills yet, but we know that there continues to be some interest, particularly Shannon Bird, again, Westminster, Adams, Jeffco, who feel that the challenges with affordable housing development come from the costs of litigation and the insurance costs that stem from that. So they are in discussions. I don't know if anybody else has information on this one from the various membership associations. It's been relative to all these other pieces, we haven't seen a lot, at least our team hasn't. So Danae, I don't know if you have more.
Yeah, I haven't seen any. So I think there's 2 kind of paths happening right now in conjunction around construction defects. So it's the bills that Ruth just mentioned. And then Mayor Castriata, I know you shared a bill from Representative Wilford last week. I think it was 1083, which was concerning insurance coverage for construction professionals. So they're different, but they're kind of under the same umbrella and going after the same issues in different ways. And so I wanted to mention that one because I think Mayor Castriata, you had mentioned that one had been introduced, and we know that there's another bill coming around insurance for construction professionals as well. That one has not been shared, so it's kind of hard right now to know where Broomfield would stand on one bill versus the other bill. My understanding from Representative Wilford's bill is that there is a belief that construction defects is not the actual issue, and that that the companies, the developers are taking advantage of this narrative to get some write-offs on their insurance and to make things more affordable from their lens. And so this bill is essentially asking for a study to see if the data is there to show that. And so there's now this mixed idea, right, of no, we really do believe this is an issue, and this will delay it several years because we'll have to wait for the study to do that. So this is kind of an interesting place right now because there's all this conversation, but this is the only bill we have. We don't even have draft bills on the other ones to react to. So
I just
monitoring
got
this
the
one.
latest draft of the TOC bill for Metro Mayors, but I've been teaching Pilates all day, so I haven't had a chance to read it or forward it. But speaking with other representatives, namely Representative Byrd and Senator Zenzinger, is that this is splitting the Dem caucus.
Yeah, it
Their
is.
bill, because a lot of them are in bed with the trial lawyers, period. And so they see Wilford's bill as a way to give the Dems who don't want to, can't support this one an out.
Yeah.
She denied that in a phone conversation. I hadn't said she hadn't read the Zenzinger bill yet. She hadn't seen it. Well, I don't believe that. I think this is just, political games, and we need to be really careful. The Metro Mayor's Caucus is fully supportive of the Zenzinger Byrd bill for construction litigation reform. And we're bipartisan, but we're all getting behind this. So this feels like a way to give those Dems who don't have the power to say, yes to this, a way to vote no on it and say, but we voted for the study. That's my take.
And we will actively, that is what I saw when I was down at the Capitol last week. And we'll keep watching for those other bills, Mayor, and keep you guys informed. It's just, like I said, it's hard when we have this picture or this puzzle that we're hearing about, but we only have one piece to really respond to. So hopefully we will get those draft bills soon so that we can actually do an analysis between the two. But that is definitely the political narrative down in the Capitol.
And also Representative Lindstedt agrees.
All right, so thank you for sharing any and all new information, and we'll try to react and be sure we're getting Broomfield up and center right away. I want to move us now to transportation, if I can. Lots also going on in this space. A more simple one is House Bill 1012. This is coming from Front Range Passenger Rail District, and it is really just a efficiency bill that allows them to vote in a more effective way to get communication out, etc. We're obviously following this, but I don't believe it's going to take, I think it's pretty much on autopilot and not going to take a lot of effort. But there are some others that will be a little bit more involved. One is Senate Bill 32, and Broomfield, this is the only bill thus far that Broomfield has taken a position on. We do support Senate Bill 32, and it is methods to increase the use of transit. So this combines free fare, ozone fare that we've done for the last couple of years. It continues that now in perpetuity for a month and a half about during the ozone season. It creates youth fare so that any youth in Colorado could access public transit for free. And then it sets up a study of how to take those statewide and also to see about a tax credit and if there would be a way to incentivize more investment in eco-passes and that kind of thing by giving employers expanded tax credits. So a lot going on in this bill. My crystal ball is that we'll probably see the tax credit piece, that's complicated and there's already some of that does exist. That piece may come off the bill and we'll see these other, the free fare proceed. And it's not that anybody opposes tax credits. I think it's just a complex area that, putting these two into one bill was frankly done because the Transportation Legislative Interim Committee could only do 5 bills. And so they brought these two concepts together. But we'll see. And I think Broomfield obviously voted to support the concept along with our membership association, Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition. And CCAT also supports that bill. Any other thoughts or question on Senate Bill 32? And again, Julia, are you putting these in the chat if you can, as I bring them up? Sorry, just in
Is
case.
there a fiscal note on this one? Like, where is this money coming from?
Yeah, so it's $14 million for the free fare. So that is general fund, and it is basically, backfilling the transportation authorities that do the free fare. Now they will tell you that they're not backfilled 100%. RTD will tell you that it's not 100% backfill, but that's the goal of it. And also I think there's some, advertising like to help promote the free fare.
We did that last year in August. We were promoting the heck out of the new North Flex Ride service that they allegedly gave us. I was going to Anthem Ranch telling the seniors, you can just call now. It's in the north now. And when they called, they were told, oh, we don't have any operators. It's not running. And they didn't tell us. And so I'm a little gun shy, got burned there. I don't think I'll be promoting free fare anymore because we just don't know if they're going to have the operators or if they're just going to decide not to run it and not tell us. So, and again, with our limited transit services in Broomfield, our youth really won't be able to take that much of an advantage of it as much as other places that are actually served by RTD. But as long as it's not coming out of our budget, I'm okay with it.
Well, that's a nice segue, Mayor, to the RTD accountability bill, because I think you are, yes, you're hitting on a subject that is absolutely known wide and far across the entire Metro Denver area, I think, across the RTD area. So, and this is part of what Broomfield has been talking about in all of these bills is, we need the T, right, in transit-oriented communities. We need the transit that we pay a lot into RTD and we don't see hardly any return on that investment. So our own legislators, Representative Lindstedt and Senator Winter, are sponsoring a bill around RTD accountability and structure. And so there was just a stakeholder meeting last Friday. They are looking at the board structure and revamping that to be closer aligned with DRCOG. And that seems to be the piece of it that is the most contentious in terms of how do we ensure adequate and functional representation, and also, people that have the skill set to be on that board. And then it also is asking, should there be more ability for local governments to use some of this revenue to do their own transit, similar to the hop, skip, and the jump in Boulder. And how does that interface? Because if Broomfield, for example, could have our own internal transit system, is that something we would consider if we were given resources? So there's a lot of discussion about this. Again, we're at the table. They desperately want our input, and we are all kind of with bated breath waiting to see. The first question was, what do you think? And we told them it'd be more helpful to have something to react to. So I think that is their goal, is to actually put some words on paper and get a little bit more structure to us. And we sent the update to you all from that stakeholder meeting. I know that was just Friday, so I know your staff is still taking a look at it, but there's no bill draft to review, but there is sort of concepts, I guess is how I would say it. Yeah. So Danae, I don't know if you have anything to add on that, or anybody has questions. And hopefully, Mayor Castriota, these issues that you're describing right there, because we can't have a successful free fare if there's no fare, there's no bus to get on.
I know. And I like what I've seen so far on Rep. Lindstedt and Senator Winter's bill on this. I think they're moving in the right direction to give local governments more of a stake since we're forced to pay. Right now we have no control over what we get in return for our 17 million. So it's nice to have, representation with this taxation.
Right.
I think the only other thing I would add is, so it does bring DRCOG into the planning process, which, from a technical perspective is really great. And then just letting council know, the amazing Sarah Grant, our transportation director, is participating in those stakeholder meetings. So there was one last Thursday, and it sounds like there's been another one scheduled for Friday. So we are actively engaging in that. And then obviously we'll monitor once we get the bill is introduced. I think we've heard in the next 2 to 3 weeks, they hope to have that happen, but we'll continue to participate in the stakeholder process as well with Sarah.
Got it. All right, then another bill that we wanted to draw your attention to is Senate Bill 36, and this is the Vulnerable Road Users Enterprise Bill. And it is another one that came out of the interim committee, the TLRC. It sets up an enterprise that via the tax, not tax, my bad, a fee, that is legally a fee on motor vehicles within the sort of 12 county region here again in the metro area. And as you remind you that an enterprise can only collect up to $20 million per year. So basically they set a $20 million cap and then they adjust a tax, I apologize, a fee based on your vehicle weight. And then that goes into the enterprise, and then the enterprise board disperses out grants to local communities, counties and cities within the 12 county area. They are targeted at, they must be for the purposes of protecting vulnerable road users, so pedestrians, bicyclists, scooters, et cetera, and making it more pedestrian and bike, et cetera, friendly. We have had a lot of discussion about this bill through the Northwest MCC. In fact, Sarah, speaking of Sarah, yay, she has been participating in discussions about how to make sure the bill is usable, that we don't have so much, red tape and bureaucracy to obtain these grants that we can't actually get them and use them. And so has been providing some very valuable insights, and it's been well received. We have a meeting actually this afternoon with CDOT to go over some of those concepts, along with, again, our colleagues from the other jurisdictions, and are hopeful to get it into a place where it's actually easy to get this money and easy to use it for our needs in Broomfield. And I see that Councilmember Henkel has her hand up, so.
Thank you for this. Yeah, we just, at CCI, we supported it as Broomfield, but Sonnenberg basically killed it in the room because he said that CDOT has enough money, quote unquote. So that's not surprising, but what's hard to do is just, like you said, is sort of parse out how much is actually going to be used for Broomfield, because we're kind of giving our money up to a bigger entity, only not to receive anything. So like you said, we just need to make sure that we get back what we give into the system, and then also that CDOT is using their money correctly. But I was just disappointed in Sonnenberg just basically blanketly saying that CDOT has enough money, quote unquote. So
yeah, we understood that CCI had taken an oppose. I know that CCAT is support. I think CML is amend, pending some of these discussions we've been having, but we can double check that. Yeah, 20 million every year is, hey, I've heard you guys say we're woefully underfunded, and any kind of new revenue that is available is welcome, as long as it's flexible, accessible, and doesn't come with a million strings. And again, our sponsors are hearing us on that, so fingers crossed that this is the path it's going. So yeah, any other questions or comments on the vulnerable users Senate Bill 36? And we can report back out after our meeting with CDOT today. Okay, then the last issue in this area is also not a small one, and that deals with parking limits. Again, the thinking here, and we've only seen a draft bill, there's not a bill that's been introduced, but the thinking here is in promoting density, you want to have less parking available. And that's also a climate goal, to basically get ourselves off of using motor vehicles and figuring out other ways to commute. So Danae, I know that you have been the closest to this one. We just got the draft, I think, late Friday afternoon. So I don't know if you have any updates on this one.
I don't yet at this time.
Yeah, again, literally like hot off the press. So to be continued. I do know that certainly in the city and county of Denver, there's been some parking limits with development over the past decade. And, that has caused some, again, it's sort of where's the transit to support the commuters who don't have parking It's sort of that cyclical thing. So to be continued.
Well, I was looking
Any-
to see if they had like a 3-wheeled bike with a roof. So when they take our cars away, I'd have a way to get around in the winter because of the weather. I mean, some of this, I shake my head, and I don't know if I'm just old, but to, start the punitive stuff and to start like forcing people to ride a bike in Colorado, help me understand this. What about the people with kids? They need a car. Who is making these decisions that we're all just going to be able to give up a car? It's not going to happen. Not in the burbs. This was never built to be walkable. Can't go back and change it. So I think a lot of this stuff, it shouldn't even impact us. I mean, we're a suburb. We're not Denver. We're not even Adams County in some places. Everybody has more transit than us. So I don't know. I'm ambivalent, I guess. But if they keep it up, they need some checks and balances. Sweep is way too powerful, and they're not in reality. This is not Boulder, this is, well, if you've been to Broomfield, it's pretty spread out. You need a car. And that's where I'm going to land on it. We're talking about parking reductions, but to look at Louisville, they built that beautiful transit station with high density residential and no parking. Well, now that the transit never showed up, and they've got a train stop, they've got a station, it's gorgeous. There's no place for anybody to park in Louisville that lives there. It's a mess. So the cart before the horse is what I'm saying. That's all. Thanks.
And you said, Mayor Castriata, that Broomfield is looking at parking limits? Okay, we will want to work with your staff to understand that better. That's helpful to know. And I had a vision of you in a golf cart, the mayor's golf cart. I think we need to work on that and just let you. So, at any rate, Council Member Henkel has her hand up, I see.
Yes, I concur, Mayor Castriata. If we're going to reduce parking or eliminate parking, we need to at least have some sort of funding for public transportation. So I brought this to the dais when we were talking about eliminating parking, and I thought, fine, if companies don't want to pay for parking, then they have to pay for public transport. Instead of paying for that parking space, and they said it costs thousands upon thousands of dollars to keep a parking lot going, and they complain about it. Well, let's put that money towards public transit. So there has to be some sort of give here, and if it means that they add something to it where commercial has to put in a certain amount towards public transportation and or developers, I would be more for it. But until then, if we're just going to be eliminating stuff without having any sort of plan for public transportation, it just seems like we're going to end up like Mayor Castriata said, and end up like Louisville.
Helpful perspectives. Thank you. So that's it on transportation. I see we have 5 minutes left. So what I might want to do is just speak to very high level. Our other buckets for policy areas are ozone and the environment. Clearly, that is not a small one at all. There is several bills that are on the way. I'll remind you all that there was an interim committee which looked at these issues, and Broomfield was quite active on that. There's some conversations about oil and gas permitting and renewable permitting, and so just lots and lots happening in this space. And I know that your staff has been front and center. We don't have, except for I think one bill introduced so far, to share with you. Danae, I don't know if you want to add anything else on that high level.
I don't think so. It's just the Kirkmeyer bill that was introduced last week. I think it was 95, I think, air quality ozone levels. So we'll look through that. She's a sole sponsor right now, so we'll definitely look into there's different, she was on that committee, and there's some coming out from Gonzalez and Senator Winters as well. So we'll see where those land. The other thing I was just going to mention just really quickly on time, for HHS and just for the council members' reference, since these are priority bills for CCI, but we have House Bill 1038, which was the High Acuity Crisis for Children bill. That was a big priority bill for CCI. CHASDA has supported it. And then I also want to let you know CCAT has supported it. So that will stay in that tier 2. And we have a lot of voices there through Director Casey and then through those organizations with it being a priority bill for CCI. And the other one in the HHS space to mention was Senate Bill 59, which is the Children's Behavioral Health System of Care. Again, a priority bill. I think CCI even helped with the drafting of that and took obviously a high, strong position of support last week. And I did want to let you know that Chaz is also in the same, so is CCAT. So we have some consistent, really strong leverage and voice in the HHS space on those 2 bills, which are the ones that really tie back to Broomfield. And then I did want to just let Jason, Director Valling, talk for just a quick second about the tobacco bill, because I think you're going to hear about it in your different membership forums. And Jason has a really great short summary of where that's at.
Yeah, just it's Senate Bill 22, and our understanding, talking about it on our CalFO Policy Committee, is it's really a cleanup bill. The intent is there's already authority to cities to regulate tobacco products, and it includes flavored tobacco products. And the idea is to give counties that same type of authority, but it does not mandate or require counties to do it. It just gives counties the authority if they choose to go that direction. And again, for us, we're sitting in counties, so not much would change, but in other counties, that if they do pass an ordinance, it usually covers the unincorporated, and then you have the municipalities that also have the options of passing ordinances. So that's the lowdown on that.
Yeah.
Real quick,
think-
before we run out of time, because I just remembered this and it's super important. It's on health and safety. There's an ECMC bill, the former COGCC bill, that was drafted from the governor's office without the commission's approval. And they say it's rule cleanup, but it also includes a mandate to have administrative law judges hear permit hearings instead of going to the commission. So it would circumvent the commission. There's a draft floating around, but it's concerning because it takes away the public process. It takes away impacted residents' ability to, and impacted communities to really have a hearing if it goes right through the ALJ process. And I haven't seen it. I'm just kind of putting it on your radar. So if we can keep an eye on this, the commission, my commission contact said we had nothing to do with drafting it. It came from the governor's office because he's actually trying to expedite permit approval behind the scenes.
Mayor Castretta, thank you. I'm looking at Rue's face and Julia's face. I don't think they've seen those either. I haven't heard that one, but we do have a meeting with some of the governor's folks later this week, and we'll do some inquiring, and once we have more information, we'll share back out. Thank you for flagging.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And one last one that I want to talk about is just tax reform generally. You may all recall we had a special session back in December, and part of that process was to set up a task force that would take a look at all the various ways property tax might roll out in the future and provide some recommendations to the General Assembly. Our own Mayor Castriotta sits on that task force. You are taking one for the team because I think they meet every other day, it feels like. But, you know, we're following that. And I don't know if there's any context you wanted to give us, Mayor, just how it's going or what to expect.
Well, it's going really well. I mean, it's been more of an information gathering 3 meetings, you know, that we've had, and with 4 to go. And we meet every other Friday. So our next meeting's on the 9th. And I had a meeting earlier with Thomas Davidson and your team, with the other commissioners, that you guys are going to be presenting. And I think what is kind of rising to the top is the smoothing average method of calculating property values, so that we don't rely on this one point in time that may not be reflective of the overall average. So that seemed to gain a lot of support among the commission to have a more certain, stable, instead of these giant spikes. And you know, why are we married to that point in time process? It didn't do us well, but then you want to be careful not to overcorrect, you know, because the market will correct. And so we're just kind of still evaluating all of the proposals. Some things like the circuit breaker part also was supported pretty well, which is kind of like what we're doing now in Broomfield with our income qualified tax refund program, you know, to our more vulnerable community members, seniors, disabled veterans. So we're doing a lot of things like that now, but to have a tax structure that is more weighted on ability to pay, I guess. And then there's George said this, George Marlin, he thinks that he wants to he's working on the presentation now. Like, probably won't go over well, but you know, for the folks who have the McMansions, you know, could that be taxed at a higher level than more modest homes? So we'll see how that goes.
Well, thank you. And again, you know, our eyes are on this because we may see some bills late in the session come from the task force. And of course, we do know that there have been ballot proposals filed that could be incredibly damaging, you know, with that flat cap. So the work is being done in earnest to try to see if there's some alternatives to offer the citizens of Colorado instead of those measures. So
like 95, or is that what you're thinking?
Yes, Prop 50, I think it is, right? Yeah, that's the, you know, California 3%, or now was it 4%? But these ones that just put caps in perpetuity on any tax growth and would.
It sounds like the folks at Bell are working on a counter type.
Yeah. I think it's kind of all hands on deck to try to, you know, like what strategies.
The freight train, the crazy train.
Yeah. So thank you. Again, I know we're over. I want to make sure we just let you all know we're also doing tax reform. So that's a lot. And we look forward to seeing you in 3 weeks. In the meantime, please note your bill trackers. And then we do weekly updates, as does Danae, to just let you know the big movement if there's any.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Not
you.
going to be.
And I did know Mayor and Councilmember Hinkle, since you're on here, did you want to just stay on just a minute? We can talk about staffing and CCI and legislative just while we're here. And Curtis, you can turn off the recording. And thank you so much to everybody that joined as well.
Thanks, y'all.
Danae James is on as well. So he's.
Sorry. Yeah. Thanks, Jen.
Yep.
And Councilmember Marshall, please stay on too.
Jean's welcome to stay on. Oh, geez, you know what? Oh.
Was that too messy?
No, Danae, I was just gonna ask Ruth what the timeline is. Jean's recommendation to have that category. That's a really good recommendation for the
What was her
tiers.
recommendation? I missed that.
Oh, yeah, I think it's doable. Cindy's working on it. Let me refresh because it might already be done. We talked this morning. Let me
Nice.
look.
Okay.
Yeah, let me see. Mouse.
It was to add a column that indicated the tiers, Heidi. It wasn't like about a specific piece of legislation.
It's not on there yet. So she was trying to see if she could add it. Yeah. So essentially we have it over in the comment section, but it's really hard to like at glance see. So you can see our position, but then it's hard to know if it's a tier 1 or tier 2 priority. And then if it is tier 2, right? Is it CCAT or is it CC4CA or who is the membership organization we're relying on, or maybe multiple? It will just have it there for quick reference for everybody.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, it was a great suggestion and open to all of
Yes.
those. Again, we're building this tool to be successful, right? To be helpful, not a hindrance. So awesome. Well, and thank you, Councilmember Marshall. I don't know if do you guys all have a quick minute? This time works for you. If not, we can connect later. I just thought we'd capitalize on the time if it did work.
Works for me for about 10-15 minutes.
Okay. And James, is that okay for you? I can't see us, so I didn't want to.
He also might be in a work meeting too.
Yeah, I know he's trying to balance both.
He
I think
does
we
double
just-
task because they have to.
Yeah, we just wanted to connect. I appreciate Councilmember Hinkle. I told Jen I learned a lot last Thursday and Friday from the CCI steering committee meetings. Each membership organization's approach to how they do legislation and how they act in the arena is very different. Like a CCAT meeting looks very different than how CCI operates. And that was my first experience. Those are long days. So it was very interesting to listen into those. And I think just wanting to connect back in. So I keep going back to this rubric for legislative priorities and trying to just make sure, again, staying disciplined to those and that we're able. So every bill that's introduced, just for reference, we are flagging, looking at, quickly doing an analysis, and then determining if there's a CCOB impact. And then depending on that impact, then we kind of look at where do we need to leverage or move it based off of that. And we do that, based off of the agendas and the bills. So what we want to do is make sure, right, that you have the information, but also want to be mindful of staffing capacity and time. So I think Councilmember Hinkle and Councilmember Marshall for CCI, just moving forward when we get those steering committee. So I think they came out. So one is Councilmember Hinkle, my stuff is still getting blocked. So I think we have that fixed. So it will help if I get the agendas not the same day as the meeting, where you can't go through bills, right? So they're supposed to come out on Monday is what I heard from CCI staff. So on Monday, then I'll do a quick scrub with Aponte Busam and our SMEs to just give you a quick, here's the bill numbers, titles, and then doesn't impact Broomfield, doesn't impact Broomfield, doesn't impact Broomfield. This one is when we need to pay to. This is our position already. CCI has already taken a position, or CCAT took a support. So you'll just have a really quick summary page that you can look back to give you that reference, if that would be helpful so that you feel prepared for that meeting.
Yeah, it's just hard to know that we're a county and something doesn't impact us. That seems really kind of odd to me. Yeah, and that's what they're there for, is the county portion of it. So it seems really strange to me that we would say it wouldn't impact us because, like, let's say we were talking about the assessments on our courts or whatever, or sorry, on our police departments and our jail systems. I mean, eventually it could have an impact if something goes awry, like we need to look at. I just don't, I'm not of the belief that nothing at CCI impacts us, or impacts us less than like a CCAT.
That's a really good point, because I had to go into, let me expand on why most of them don't, because you're absolutely right. The reason for that the impact is less is the statute. We're not a statutory county, and that's the reason, right? So yes, it would have an impact, but as a home rule county, we already have the authority, or we already have the jurisdiction to do those things. And so I should be more clear when I say it doesn't impact, because you're absolutely right. These things are all interconnected, but the advantage that we have is we're a home rule city and a home rule county, which gives us this jurisdiction and authority that most of these statutory counties, who are the majority of the counties at that table, right, don't have. And so I think that that's the big challenge is it's giving them the voice and power that Broomfield for many years has already had. And so that's what I mean by doesn't have impact. So I appreciate the opportunity to clarify that.
Yeah, but we are still subject to state law. I mean, we were still subject to state law, oil and gas.
But not on everything. Here's the perfect example. Short-term rental licensing.
Yeah.
We have the ability to just put that in place ourselves. These statutory counties have to ask the state for permission. And that's why a lot of this doesn't impact us, because we don't have to ask for permission. We have all the control, the trifecta. And that's where you'll find that they're asking for things from the state that we already have. And that's the only difference. That's kind of the short.
And those are the bills that I've seen before where they talk about ADUs and things like that we've already put in place. I won't play into that, but there are things that are there that I think could have an impact on Broomfield. And if they don't have an impact, I need to know why. Like sometimes I'm not really even told why it doesn't have an impact. It just can't be the answer of, hey, we're statutory and move on. It just felt really dismissive, and I don't think that was the intent. I just need to know why. I need to know, like, what is our law compared to their law, and can we just move forward on our own? Like we have been, like, let's say we do this for, the affordable housing. Yes, we can do this on our own. And they always are like, yay, state's like, you're doing it great. And we're like, great. But then as soon as they lay down that hammer where they're like, actually, we're going to take that power away from you that, that you can't have anymore, then yeah, that impacts us. So
Sure.
need to know, I know that we can move forward with a lot of things, but I also know too, we've been preempted before, and I don't want that to land in my lap unexpectedly.
Sure.
So Heidi, that's fair. And, and we will own the in preparedness for you walking into that meeting. Guyleen reminded, you know, in our conversations that whether it impacts us or not, you having the opportunity to not only understand the why, but from CCI as a whole, I mean, that's one of the reasons that when we pulled from CCI, it wasn't just oil and gas, right? It was the amount of not just influence, but when they set their guidelines, right? So they don't look at every single bill that's introduced. Their guidelines historically are not bills. They're bills that impact the 63 counties. But not specifically proven, and not just because of statutory, right? So it's either statutory or the fact that we are a city and a county, or the fact that the sheriff and the assessor and the treasurer are not elected officials. So those 4 categories are huge categories, and you'll find that 85% of all of those conversations that happen before the session starts, those 4 categories are the ones that CCI deploys historically to set their priorities. A lot of time, you know, in the criminal justice arena, it's funding, right? So they, for a decade, were trying hard to get additional funding for their county courts. We continuously fell outside of those funding mechanisms, much like when we're trying to go after the grants, right? Because of our AMI. And so those those categories are what 85% fall into. Those that fall outside of the 85%, that's fair that you all have that scrub. And CCI
Too is like education. Sometimes I would like to be able to speak to a bill and just be educated on what Broomfield is doing, or, you know, where our constraints are, that we could actually strengthen the bill, that it could help us. You know, and it could affect us in certain ways. Like maybe they are creating more funding, and then we could access that funding based on our feedback. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I do think that
it
we
does.
need to be at least at the table, because we haven't been. And then Boulder wasn't even allowed to vote yet because they didn't get their money in. It's just ridiculous. So, you know, I think we're going to be leaning a little bit more left in these CCI meetings, and we're going to be battling it out against somebody like a Sonnenberg. And I feel like it's like, you know, what is the giant in the Bible? I forget.
David and Goliath.
David and Goliath. And that's who I feel like I'm going against right now. And it made me mad that I didn't speak up more on that transportation bill. But, you know, he knows more about CDOT. He's well versed in the systems, and I don't know enough to like really speak to it. So I beat myself up afterwards that I did not speak up. So
No,
and
Heidi,
I spoke up the next day, and I was like, screw all y'all, I'm speaking up because this is what I know about, and I'm well educated in this. And it was Health and Human Services arena, which I'm a lot, just personally much more educated. But if I can even be more educated on how CDOT works and what kind of money they have, and that isn't always my job, I get that, and we're gonna have to rely on staff, but it would be helpful, you know, from a perspective of staff, how much would that actually help us? And I could go to bat for not only Broomfield, but for others like Boulder who wanted to access that money, and we were shut down. It didn't even affect Sonnenberg. That was the thing too.
well, I mean, the structure was different back in 2018 when I was the CCI rep. I did have help from Ann Lane, who was our legislative contact at the time, and she went to the meetings with me, or we sat on the phone together because it was pre-Zoom. And she was explaining things to me in real time as it happened, because I was a deer in the headlights too, Heidi. So I think because you're new and this foray is new for you, that it might help to have that guidance, because it really helped me today to have that, you know, support from Ann. She knew a whole lot more about everything than I did. And in order to level the playing field for Heidi and support her in this role, at least for now.
Yeah, no, we're here to support. I think it's just I want to just make sure that we're getting you what you need, but also managing expectations of all of those bills, right? And getting you on the important bills so that you can be at that table. So I think one, I feel good that we're gonna have the agendas, hopefully, Heidi. So like if you get an agenda on Monday, don't feel bad about asking me if I got it, because I did not get it until Thursday. And now just seeing through it, that helped me drastically to just see how they operate, because it is, Guyleen, to your point, it is a very different space than any of the MMC, MAC, I've been on all of them. That one is very different than the rest. So that helps me as well. And then let me run some ideas. Jen's been around this arena for a long time, but I have like a matrix that I use that I scrub bills, just my internal stuff. So let me see, Heidi, it's not a deep dive of how CDOT, you know, for that example, for that bill of how CDOT works and stuff, because it's hard to be able to anticipate all of those questions, but at least just a quick brief highlight of what it is. And then we can figure out what comes from there, if that feels like it's meeting what you need. And if not, I mean, it could obviously an ongoing conversation. I just wanted to make sure, you know, we were just clear on the same page and that it was manageable, I guess, to be able to do that. Because I think the challenge I saw even on Thursday and Friday is, right, the TOC stakeholder meeting and the RTD accountability meeting, those are all happening at the same time, with those going all day. And
the same time as our coordination meeting. I mean, it's just like
and
there's
trying
no
to
storage meetings
yeah,
right now.
exactly, and trying to prioritize. So I think on the front end, Heidi, if we can do that scrub for you and James, we'll get that to you. Like I said, now that things are actually on the calendar, that helps as well. And then let's go from there and see if that feels different or not, and if that works for you.
I'll look through them too. And one good thing is that I do rely on James to show up for the taxation part and the finance part. He does a full job in that area. And that's something that like CCAT doesn't really do a lot in, you know. That's something that, you know, like transportation, Austin tries to be there as much as possible, but, you know, can't always. So I will probably need support in certain areas where I might just see and just check with you, and we can just communicate on what's really worth it to speak up on, because I'm not going to speak up on everything. I don't want to be that person that speaks to every single bill. I want to be that person that speaks to maybe one or two bills and then like hits it with a bat. You know, I don't want to show up and be this loud person all the time, but I do need to know where our power is and where advocacy is. And then we are kind of the minority in the group, but they can't pass certain things too without us. So at a certain point, we're going to have Boulder in there. We have, you know, Clear Creek. We have all these other like Gilpin counties. Really, we're, you know, going to be going to bat for certain things, and we're going to have to really pull our information together to really, you know, not let them kill things like that. Because if we had Boulder there and we had another person missing too from a different county, I really think we could have at least gone to a monitor versus just right off the bat opposed by a county man who that certain bill didn't even affect his county. So
well, so and here's so two things. One, Danae, you know what would be helpful just from a learning curve perspective is share with Heidi another way that we are covered, even without going to CCI, is all the associations, right? So we're well versed with the CHASDA, with the CALFO, with the and their legislative updates are rock solid. So as CCI continues, I mean, it's dysfunction junction over there, Heidi. And so part of you being brand new to that is a good thing for them, because if you were well versed in legislation, that meeting on Thursday and Friday, you would have been circling back to Kelly, that new executive director, with a WTF. Because for her to lead and allow the staff that they have now, which are damn near barely more than interns, to be directing that group, CCI will never have the juice at the Capitol, ever. Because what they do is they make half-assed recommendations. I mean, those folks on Thursday didn't even know to look at the flippin' fiscal note, for God's sake. It was horrifying. I mean, it was a flippin' mess. And so Danae's sending me these notes going, oh my God, is this how it normally, and it is not. And so let's you and I find some time, and James, And I'll do a 101, 201, the same thing like with Danae that we did 2 years ago, to really help you navigate some cheat sheets on how and where to look at these bills, how to rule out at least 70% of them based on who the sponsors are, how to rule out 90% of them based on the timing of not just the kill committee, right? But anytime that a bill is going to go to finance and appropriations, that's a really good indication off of the top that bill's going to struggle. So kind of those nuanced things, I think, would be a really good piece. And then let's be sure, Danae, that Heidi and James are getting CalFO. The assessors, I looked at that one yesterday. God, I don't know who their lobbyists are, but those they are high and tight. I love the format, how clear they are, the juxtaposition of what's going to happen next. But Heidi, I think especially if you're interested in that legislation stuff, some of